Criminal organizations invest vast amounts of money in legal businesses worldwide. These investments are used mainly for money laundering purposes, but also they provide these organizations with a powerful tool to raise forms of social consensus, especially in underdeveloped regions where the government fails to solve social conflicts and unable to provide protection of property rights. This is why these organizations are still so powerful and feared. Even when the global economy is more prosperous than ever, they are able to exploit the weaknesses of government institutions so that the policies aimed to restrict these organizations become less and less effective. Top organizations like the Italian and American Mafia to Japanese Yakuzas bring in a lot of money from their unofficial operations and then reinvest most of it in the legal economy. It is estimated that organized crime groups worldwide invest more than 75% of their profits in the legal economy. And through its investments, organized crime groups become an alternative provider of capital and employment, thus increasing their power while bringing catastrophic consequences to the economy. While most people already know a lot about the unofficial side of the mafia, like dealing substances or shooting their competitors, thanks to Hollywood of course, this video focuses on the legal side of the criminal underworld. Why do these criminals infiltrate the legal economy? What kinds of business do they invest in? What strategies are used to control and manage these businesses? And how can they gain lots of money and political power through a combination of legal and illegal activities? These questions are the questions that we should be asking if we want to have a hope of understanding how these organizations actually work. So, let's begin right away. And by the way, I will refer to these criminal organizations as the Mafia from now on. Although, what I will describe soon can be applied to most organized crime groups. Now, I said before that money laundering is the main use of legal businesses, and indeed, most researchers tend to view it this way. But this isn't the full story. Without a full understanding of why the mafia invests in the legal economy, we really have no hope of understanding how they work. So, there are 5 reasons why. Concealment of criminal activities, as these businesses could be used by the mafia as layers for hiding and concealing incoming and outgoing flows of cash. Profit maximization, to gain more money and also for diversification purposes. Social consensus, to obtain support from the local population by distributing jobs and sharing subcontracts with friendly corporations. Control of territory, maximizing physical control and strengthening ties with the local population and the political elite. And last but not the least, cultural reasons. Because, as you can see from the movies, mafia organizations are bound by a set of traditions and values that motivates them to invest in certain industries. This could explain why the Camorra Mafia invests in the wholesale of typical local food products like dairy products and vegetables, and why biker gangs invest in mechanic garages and tattoo shops. And from all of these reasons, we can hypothesize about what kinds of businesses the mafia invest in. They want territories that are close and have a large mafia presence to maximize control. They want to invest in markets with low openness to international investments to maximize profits and possibly monopolize the market. And they want to invest in traditional sectors characterized by low technological level and high labor intensity in order to distribute jobs and raise social consensus. 2 of the most common examples of this are construction and mining. They also prefer small and medium-sized businesses in fragile markets that could better exploit their potential for infiltration and act as lenders of last resort. I will explain how they do this with loan sharking tactics later in the video. An analysis of the confiscated assets from the Italian Mafia confirmed that mining has the highest rate of mafia presence, because of its strategic role both in the supply of cement for construction and in the illegal dumping of trash. Oh, and by the way, the garbage business is an easy money-making machine for the mafia, adding to the attractiveness of the mining sector, as abandoned mines are a great place for dumping trash, especially the toxic ones. Construction is still the classic and the preferred investment option, as well as hotels, bars, and restaurants. Mafia presence can also be found in industries such as wholesale and retail food products and clothing. There's even a group who specialize in the trade of flowers and plants. And there's also interest for gas stations and water supply, probably to gain more control of the territory. The relationship between mafia and legal businesses is a complex one, because there are lots of ways on how they can own a business with varying degrees of control. For example, legal businesses may be owned and directly managed by criminal entrepreneurs, usually by a high-ranking organization member. This kind of direct involvement is especially useful if the legal businesses are an integral part of the unofficial operation. For example, a mafia organization that uses overseas containers to transport substances may set up businesses in different countries so that these businesses can show up on papers as the official senders and receivers of the shipment. Although, this kind of direct involvement is mostly used by a member of the organization to pursue their own interests, not the organization itself. On the other hand, a more common structure involves a legal entrepreneur who is not a mafia member. These legal businessmen may be motivated to collude with them because of fear, or they may actively decide to take part in aiding the organization to gain economic benefits. A member of the mafia will usually approach collusive entrepreneurs whose businesses are of interest to them. They offer them an opportunity to expand their businesses and increase the financial rewards. If the business owner considers cooperation with the criminal groups to be convenient and profitable, they will usually agree to the deal. A common example of this is a pub that gets its supplies of goods from the mafia. Because these goods are untaxed, the pub can set lower prices and prices out its competitors in the process. Another example of this is a licensed pharmacy that helps to sell unofficial medicine, with both sides agreeing to share the profits. Loan sharking is another preferred way for the mafia to gain control of a business, especially in times of economic crisis where getting a loan from a bank is pretty much impossible. When these businesses are unable to obtain bank loans and are in financial difficulties, the mafia may take place of the banks and offer their loans. These loans enable the mafia to infiltrate the companies until they can take them over. The preferred client is of course small and medium-sized businesses that own assets, so that these assets can either be sold or used to engage in fraud or to launder money. Small and medium-sized businesses also have the advantage of being vulnerable to financial crises, and therefore vulnerable to organized crime. In the 1960s, for example, loan sharking was the second most profitable activity of the mafia in the US, while providing diversified assets for money laundering purposes. All of these ways of infiltrating the legal market vary from a simple business partnership to a forced takeover. And their uses vary, ranging from territorial expansion, small-time fraud to large-scale illegitimate operations. By using legal businesses effectively, the mafia and large organized crime groups around the world can maximize profits and gain political power. This is how they are able to stay relevant and thrive even when their influence has been waning over the last 20 years. All of these organizations partly filled the void created by an inept government, and may have contributed to the weaknesses of the state and to economic underdevelopment. So, by knowing why and how they infiltrate the economy, we can try to limit their influence and protect the markets that are prone to mafia infiltration, as they bring disastrous consequences to our economy. If you enjoyed this video, you may also like my video on the problems with the banking industry, where I explain the mechanics of how banks actually create money and describe why banking is broken beyond repair. This is Doverhill, and see you next time.